information can come to persons within the company, which would be able who would be able to use this on trading.
I just want to come back on something there before we move to Rachel's question. I think we should be clear that we're not asserting, as the question might seem to imply, that energy companies are engaging in widespread insider trading at present. Just to be clear. The important factor is, does the information that they have fall within the definition of inside information? And there's lots of everyday information which doesn't fall inside this definition. The point about the need to ensure that they publicize the point about whether they need to ensure that they do not trade based on inside information, I think, is the most important point that we have raised. When they have information inside their company that is market sensitive, that will affect the price of the wholesale energy product, the gas or electricity product in which they're trading, then they shouldn't be trading based on that information or trading in that kind of way. For that, you will need to take practical steps to ensure that you have any separation between your, as that Andras mentioned, between your trading decisions and your some of your production decisions. But that's not necessary if you don't have inside information.
The question that came in from Rachel is why are carbon markets not included in the scope of our remit or our proposal? So the Commission has assessed the importance of traded carbon markets, especially in relation to traded electricity and gas markets, i.e. carbon being an important input, if you want, fuel to trading decisions on electricity and gas. The issue is with carbon markets requires a deepen or more deep assessment. So not just covering potential market abuses on traded carbon markets, but also including other issues of fraud around traded carbon markets. So for all these reasons, we have decided that the Commission will look into these issues in more depth in 2011, and will carry out an investigation to encompassing all these issues, and only after there will be a proposal made how to tackle carbon markets.
Now, just one point I think is important in relation to the carbon markets. Although it's true that energy companies are very important carbon traders, it's also true that we have a significant impact on industrial consumers and other, would say, non-energy companies. That it's very important that we consider how any proposals impact on them. Moving on to Rachel's second question, which is our expectations to how quickly do we expect the proposals to go through Parliament and Council. On that, I think we're quite confident that these are good, strong proposals that will get a lot of strong support at both Parliament and Council. Can you, I forget the exact dates, you've been talking more with the Hungarian presidency.
The information we have received from the Hungarian presidency is that by the end of their term, which is the first half of 2011, they would want to reach a political agreement on this file in the first reading. This would probably allow us, for the legislators, to conclude, and for the Council formally to adopt before 2011.
Is over. So yes, so we should expect to get it done within a year. That we should be able to start the application already in 2012. Yes.
So there is a question on about the data collection by Acer and the 15 strong staff or additional staff required to do the monitoring job, and how this corresponds to the MiFID regulation. Well, yes, maybe for the staff, we approximately foresee 15 more people needed within Acer to carry out this genuinely new function of market monitoring, with of course an additional resources in IT primarily. I mean, there will have to be data flows and data amounts of data handled in a short amount of time from a number of sources. So that will require some investment for Acer. On data reporting channels, yes, indeed, that's a very important question. Because there is already obligations to some financial companies to report their derivatives transactions, including, of course, energy derivatives, to financial regulators. So it is important that any sort of data feed and our requirements fit well together. What will happen is that Acer, we have given sort of a framework, a data reporting framework, which would allow for collecting data, let's say from the highest possible levels of aggregators. So if these data are to be found with power exchanges or with brokers or trade facilitators, Acer would want to get these transactional data from those few participants instead of going back to trade participants. We have also foreseen a measure that if data had been reported based on obligations arising from MiFID or financial regulation, this data would not have to be reported twice. So there will be no double reporting requirements on participants. But again, if, for example, these data are placed in a trade repository, Acer would have a convenient access to this trade repository to get these transactional data on derivatives.
And I think there's an important point here that the practicalities of how data will be transmitted to Acer and will be worked out in more detail and will be specified in the delegated acts. But already we're seeing some very important developments here where everybody's working well together, from energy regulators, power exchanges, brokers, to try and look at a proof of concept, you might say, to say that this is possible and that we will be able to do it. What Acer will in the end do on this level is also give them a framework for transmitting this data. So then the question of making the information public, and yes, there is provision for making the information public, provided that it doesn't impinge on the confidentiality of that. So we'd expect some level of aggregation data to be made available, and the frequency we'll have to deal with in more detail later. I don't think that's something we can answer now. Will be looked at by Acer and in cooperation with the market participants and regulators and so on.
There is a CO2 question came in again with traded carbon markets, but I think we covered that already. Just to say it very quickly again, carbon markets are very important, but they need a more thorough analysis, for which the Commission will go on in 2011 and conduct an in-depth investigation. And only after this is concluded, there will be made suggestions how to cover traded carbon markets with appropriate market conduct rules.
I think we covered the penalties. Yeah, again, I'll repeat the answer because it might not have been clear when we addressed this earlier, when I was talking earlier. The penalties will be set by the member states. This is in line, it's a sort of a standard provision in these kinds of regulations. But there's a recital, and they have to be dissuasive, proportionate, and excuse me, I can't remember the final part of it. You'll find it in the regulation. However, there's a recital which also points out, recital 23, I think, is that they should be in line with the penalties for breaches of MAD, for the Market Abuse Directive, because this is an equivalent level of seriousness, and Commissioner Oettinger has had some things to say about that in the last number of days. But so we think this will be, when member states transpose this regulation, this aspect of this, I know they don't transpose regulations, but when they implement this part of the regulation, we expect them that they will treat it with the seriousness that it deserves.
The next question was about product coverage. Why is coal not covered? It's an important question which we have dealt with when we were assessing the commodity scope of our proposal. Globally traded markets, coal or oil, cannot be sort of legislated on without prior having a global understanding of how to tackle these commodities. So just to maybe more concrete, if we had been going on and making a similar legislation or bringing coal, let's say, into the scope of remit, we would have lost out the most important traded markets in the globe. So we do need an understanding and a common understanding of those who can regulate those markets before we can go on and create market conduct rules for those markets.
On the second question on the unbundling, well, just to be clear, there are no unbundling provisions in terms of the separation between trading and internal and inside information or the production parts of an energy company. So there's nothing to be necessarily enforced here, that the walls are in place. What there is, though, is there is an obligation not to trade on information. And this is what the market monitoring will uncover, and what a more detailed investigation would uncover as well. So the first step, as I said, would be the monitoring based on the work of the agency and later the national regulators. And if they uncover suspicious behaviour, the next step then would be to engage in a detailed investigation, which they have some quite strong powers in this proposal set out in Article 10.2. These powers are equivalent to those that apply to financial regulators in enforcing MAD and MiFID. And I think that's very important, that they will be able to do that, and they will be able to investigate the trades and the behaviour of the companies where they do suspect instances of market abuse.
The next question is about, again, making collected data by Acer made available to the public. What is the level of commercial sensitiveness? Yes, I believe these details will have to be worked out when Acer thinks about what data needs to be made available. What we of course mean is that single trade data, where someone would see who transacted with whom at what price with a timestamp. Not this level of data will not be disclosed. We are much more thinking about giving information out on traded volumes, on number of trades, and how especially they have developed over time. And so there will have to be some sort of way found between pure statistics and some timely available information without impinging on discussion.
And just when it comes to what will be commercially sensitive data, I mean, this is not a concept that we have developed ourselves. You're right, there's a lot of application of principles of not releasing commercially sensitive data across financial regulation, other aspects of energy regulation. The Commission here regularly has to redact for commercial sensitivity, so there's plenty of precedent to work off here in establishing what commercially sensitive data is when looking at what information should be released. We have a question from Claudia, and she asked if all contracts fall under the regulation or if there are exemptions. I think for this we should say is that the regulation covers wholesale energy products, which are defined quite clearly as being contracts related to supply of electricity and gas, or the transportation of electricity and gas, or derivatives thereof. I mean, in general, that's what it covers, and these are what are. And then wholesale energy markets are markets where these products are traded. The second question is whether you are manipulating the prices of these products, and that is an overall sense of what is covered. When it comes to the data that will be collected, this has not been specified because it will be necessary to look at where you are practically looking for abuses, and that will be considered later. But of course, we're looking at in the main standardized contracts because this is what is easiest to manipulate. However, if somebody was manipulating a standardized contract to benefit themselves in some kind of bespoke contract, that would also constitute market manipulation.
Maybe one exemption that or more adding on this definition, that's electricity and gas supply contracts